History remembers kings, but it erased the fate of queens. Not the ones who ruled in glory, but the ones who were captured. Because what Rome did to defeated queens wasn't just punishment. It was humiliation. It was psychological torture. And sometimes, it was far worse than death. Imagine this. You were once worshipped. Servants bowed before you. Armies fought in your name. And now, you are chained, paraded like an animal, stripped of your dignity in front of thousands. This wasn't an accident. This was Rome's message to the world. Defy us, and this will be your fate. When Rome conquered a kingdom, they didn't just defeat armies. They targeted symbols of power. And no symbol was more powerful than a queen. Captured queens were treated differently from kings. Why? Because Rome understood something terrifying. Breaking a queen meant breaking the spirit of an entire nation. One of the most brutal traditions was the Roman triumph. A grand victory parade in Rome. Sounds glorious, right? But for captured queens, it was a nightmare. They were dragged through the streets in chains, forced to walk behind the victorious general. Crowds screamed, mocked, laughed. People who once would have bowed to them, now threw insults and filth. And the worst part? They were kept alive, just long enough to suffer every second of it. Because for Rome, death was too easy. The humiliation didn't end in the streets. For many captured queens, that was only the beginning. After the Roman triumph, their fate took an even darker turn. Some were thrown into underground prisons. Cold, damp, and completely silent. These were not ordinary cells. They were designed to break the mind. No royal clothes. No servants. No identity. Just darkness. And waiting. One of the most infamous places was the Tullianum dungeon. A place where Rome kept its most important prisoners. Here, queens who once ruled nations were reduced to nothing. No trial. No mercy. Just time, slowly crushing them. But Rome didn't always rush to kill them. Sometimes, they kept them alive on purpose. Why? Because their suffering was more valuable than their death. Every day they lived in chains was a reminder to the world. Rome doesn't just conquer your land. It erases your legacy. In some cases, queens were forced to witness the destruction of everything they loved. Their cities burned. Their people enslaved, and they could do nothing. Imagine the psychological torture. To survive, while your entire world is destroyed. And then came the final decision. Execution, or something even worse. Because not all queens were given the mercy of death. Some were turned into living trophies. A warning, a symbol of absolute defeat. And for a queen, that was the ultimate destruction. Not all captured queens were executed. In fact, some faced a fate many historians consider far worse. They were kept alive, but not as rulers, not even as prisoners. They became living symbols of Rome's dominance. One of the most chilling examples is Cleopatra Selene II, the daughter of Cleopatra VII. After Rome defeated Egypt, she wasn't killed. Instead, she was taken to Rome, paraded in chains, displayed as proof that even the mighty bloodline of Egypt had fallen. Think about that for a moment. A royal princess, forced to walk in front of thousands, as people stared, judged, and celebrated her downfall. But Rome didn't stop there. Captured royal women were often forced into political marriages. Not for love, not for alliance, but for control. They were given to Roman allies or generals, used as tools to stabilize conquered territories. Their identity erased, their past rewritten, their future owned by Rome. In some cases, they were absorbed into Roman society, expected to abandon their language, culture, even their gods. Imagine being a queen, and then being forced to live as someone else entirely. To smile, to obey, to forget who you once were. This wasn't just physical captivity. This was psychological annihilation. Rome didn't just want victory, it wanted transformation. A conquered queen wasn't just defeated, she was reshaped into a symbol of submission. And sometimes, that transformation lasted longer than any execution ever could. But some queens refused to let Rome decide their fate. And when they realized what was coming, they made a choice that shocked even the Romans. They chose death. One of the most powerful examples is Cleopatra 7. After the defeat by Octavian, she knew exactly what awaited her. A Roman triumph. Chains. Humiliation in front of the entire city. She understood something terrifying. Rome didn't just want to defeat her. They wanted to display her. To turn her into a spectacle. A once great queen reduced to a walking symbol of failure. And Cleopatra refused. Instead of giving Rome that satisfaction, she took her own life. Because for her, death was freedom. But not every queen was given that choice. Take Zenobia, a powerful ruler who dared to challenge Rome. When she was captured, she was taken to Rome. And yes, she was paraded, covered in jewels, bound in chains, forced to walk as the crowd watched in awe. A queen turned into a living trophy. Some sources say she was later allowed to live in comfort. But think about it. Would that really feel like freedom? To live the rest of your life knowing you were once powerful, and now you exist only because Rome allows it. This was the true cruelty of Rome. It didn't always kill its enemies. Sometimes, it let them live, just long enough to remember everything they had lost. Rome's treatment of captured queens was more than victory. It was a lesson in absolute power. Death for them was sometimes the mercy Rome denied. Humiliation, erasure of identity, and forced submission became the tools of conquest. Imagine this, a queen once worshipped by her people, commanding armies, shaping nations. Now stripped of everything that made her a ruler. Her crown taken, her throne gone, her legacy mocked. And yet, Rome's methods ensured the world remembered. A captured queen wasn't just a prisoner, she was a warning. A living example that defiance would be crushed, completely and utterly. Some queens, like Cleopatra, chose death over humiliation. Some, like Zenobia, survived, but lived as a shadow of their former selves. Rome understood one terrifying truth. Breaking a queen didn't just defeat her, it crushed the morale of her people, erased hope, and reinforced Rome's supremacy. And that's why their treatment was far worse than death. Because death is final. Humiliation lingers. Loss of identity lasts. Being alive while powerless, while your world crumbles, is a fate worse than any sword or poison. The legacy of these queens endures, not only for their bravery and defiance, but for the cruel reality of Rome's conquest. So next time history celebrates Roman victories, remember the queens behind the chains, the ones whose power was stolen, whose dignity was shattered, and whose suffering echoed far beyond their deaths. Their stories are a chilling reminder. Sometimes survival is far worse than death. History didn't just forget these queens, it tried to erase them. But their stories survive.